The natural tendency of these sensations is for them to travel up into your arms and your legs, perhaps into the region of your chest, perhaps up into your face and your cheeks. To inspire you in your meditation, you may find it beneficial to bring to mind the image of a mountain. The mountain is balanced, grounded, and stable. Imagine what it would be like for a mountain to have consciousness. Rain may fall on the mountain or not. A nearby river may rise and then recede. A small animal may run across a fallen log and then jump into hiding. The mountain simply observes silently. No judgment, no labeling, no comparing, no expectation, with ancient awareness. Be like a mountain as you silently observe sensations within your body mountain. Now, very gently, very, very gently, please redirect your awareness. Become aware again of your physical body and allow your breathing to become less shallow. Taking deeper and deeper breaths, become aware again of the garments of clothing resting on the surface of your body. Still deeper breaths arising from meditation, and become aware of the surroundings inside of the room that you're occupying. Become aware again of the world that exists outside of the room that you're occupying. Become aware again of nearby mountains, of neighboring countries, of neighboring continents, of mountains located upon those neighboring continents. And for the dedication of our merit this morning, I'd like you to please bring to mind someone in your life, someone with whom you are close, who is experiencing mental suffering, physical suffering, or both. May all of the merit that we've accumulated from this morning's meditation be the cause for this person to be completely free of their suffering. May they enjoy a swift and complete return to perfect health, physically and emotionally. Completely fill up your belly and lungs with air, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes and bring your meditation to an end. Thank you very much, everyone. So this is the part where my meditation friend Steve Anderson would say that I should remind everybody. My friend Steve says, when you teach meditation to people who are new to meditation, be sure and continue to remind them that it takes time, it takes practice, be patient. And I can't emphasize that point enough. Our mind isn't used to focusing on something single-pointedly, completely free of distractions. Our mind is more familiar with things like multitasking. And so when we go into meditation and try and still our mind and quiet it and have it focus with single-pointed concentration, sometimes it rebels and is difficult to harness and remain focused. So just be patient, hang in there. It takes time. It will bear fruit. Apply effort with a happy mind is what my teacher Geshe Kelsang would say. So yesterday, we talked basically about the DNA of consciousness. I consider it to be the DNA of consciousness, the difference between the thinking conceptual mind and achieving a state of non-conceptual awareness. I'm not going to spend any time summarizing that. We went into it in fairly decent length, and the recording, by the way, of yesterday's talk is up on the Lotus Center YouTube page. So whereas yesterday was kind of about the DNA of consciousness, this morning's talk is going to be about the DNA of meditation practice, of the practice we're going to do. And and just exactly how this meditation on the inner body will bring us to a state of inner peace and tranquility, and help us to cultivate the good qualities that we aspire to cultivate. So the whole basis of this meditation, and the whole basis of the suffering that we experience, comes from this confused notion of me, also known as sense of self. I, me, self, ego, these are all terms that we use interchangeably. And by the way, with regard to the term ego, we're not using that term within the context of like Freudian psychology, ego, superego, id, stuff like that. I don't even know what those terms mean, but I know that we're not talking about the same thing in this context of meditation. Ego is synonymous with sense of self, me, I, this self that we worry about so much, that we obsess about, that is kind of the driving force behind everything that we do. And we are confused about this sense of self. We regard our sense of self as being this independent, autonomous, almost inherently existing entity that is real. It has real, autonomous, inherent, independent existence. Actually, our sense of self is a fabricated idea. When we, if I could, we don't have time, but maybe another time I will, go through a very systematic process and demonstrate to ourselves that this self that we spend so much time thinking about and worrying about and obsessing over is a made-up idea. Different components of this self could be body, mind, memory, experiences. We kind of arbitrarily and subjectively kind of clump them all together and say, this is me. And as I say, don't have time to go into that in too much length, but just let this be your litmus test for the fact that the sense of self is a made-up idea. If your sense of self really was inherently existing, autonomous, independent, a truly existing phenomenon from its own side, everybody would regard it exactly the same way. And the fact is, nobody regards anything exactly the same way. Everybody has a different perception and experience of everything because everybody has different minds. So we perceive everything differently. So there is no inherently existing anything. So there was like a 2-minute primer on ultimate truth, also known as emptiness. But anyways, just know that the sense of self that we associate so strongly with, it's not what it appears to be. And how that gets us into trouble is that our line of thinking goes, how it gets us into trouble and results in suffering for us is that we go from me, this sense of self, and if there is a sense of self, then there is necessarily other. Self and other. I'm independently and autonomously existing, inherently existing, therefore I am separate from you. I'm separate from other. Because I am separate from you, my happiness and suffering is separate from your happiness and suffering. They're totally unrelated. So this confused line of thinking goes in dependence upon this confused notion of self and other. Not only do we go down this path of this line of thinking that my happiness and suffering are separate from your happiness and suffering, we also think your happiness comes at the expense of my happiness. Since they're separate and distinct, your happiness comes at the expense of my happiness, so I have to do everything I possibly can to protect me and my happiness, and everything that I mistakenly regard as giving rise to my happiness, like my possessions, like my relationships. Me and mine versus you and yours. That line of thought, that confused line of thought, which gives rise to all of the suffering and all of the problems that we experience, is called dualistic view. Basically, this view that thinks this is separate from that. I am separate from you, rather than a correct view which gives rise to inner peace and harmony and harmonious relationships, the view of interconnectedness. I am not the same entity as you, and I'm not separate from you. That is a non-dualistic view. That is an interconnected view. My happiness and suffering are not separate from your happiness and suffering. Therefore, let's coexist in harmony, whatever it takes. And we don't have to look very far into the outside world to see kind of the manifestation of dualistic view, this view that my happiness and suffering is separate from yours. I mean, it's the basis of all of the world problems, I would say, from country to country, political party to political party in this country. It all arises from this notion, my happiness and suffering is separate from yours, therefore I've got to take care of number one and make sure that I'm protected. So how this relates to the meditation that we do, in particular the inner body meditation, is that the inner body meditation helps us to have a direct, non-conceptual experience of the fact that our body and our mind are not separate. When you observe sensations within your body, within your inner body, your hands and your feet, anywhere that you observe a sensation, there is necessarily consciousness at that place. So observing consciousness within your body, the lines of distinction between body and mind start to blur. And eventually, over time, you will come to a place where you will see the non-duality of your body and mind. And it's funny, we hear this expression all the time, mind-body interconnectedness, and there are even software programs called mind-body stuff. This is how it links up. This is how it links up, and this is how we can come to benefit and live happier lives through a recognition that our body and mind aren't separate. Our body has consciousness. It's sort of like, I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but initially when we do this inner body meditation, we think that we are bringing consciousness into our body. We're directing consciousness to our body. But that's not the case, actually. Really, what we're doing is awakening to the fact that there is consciousness within the body. It's that non-conceptual awareness that we discussed yesterday, and that is the state of mind through which we awaken from the confused ideas that we have about how the world and the people in the world around us really exist. We observe sensations within our body, and we can know that there is consciousness at that place, consciousness within our body. We see the interconnectedness, the absolute inseparability of our body and consciousness. And eventually, ultimately, hopefully, we'll get to a point where we have the realization that our body is consciousness. Not only that our body has consciousness, but that it is consciousness. So, the last point I want to make about this, you guys, is that if you can come to have a recognition, the wisdom recognition of one interconnected relationship, like your body and your mind, if you can do it in that one place, then you can do it elsewhere. Then you can expand that recognition to experiences in your life. My happiness and suffering are not separate from my partner's happiness and suffering, or from my neighbor's happiness and suffering, or the happiness and suffering of the person of this political party whose opinion I happen to disagree with, or whatever it is. This is where the rubber hits the road in terms of benefiting in our daily lives through a recognition of non-duality or interconnectedness. Those two terms are synonymous, interconnectedness and non-duality. So a lot there, a lot to unpack there. That, from my perspective, is the DNA of how meditation works and how we can solve our problems and free ourselves from suffering through meditation. I'll send out an outline a little bit later today and post this class on the YouTube page. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you for your outlines.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, Tina.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jeff.